Let's see. We're going to connect to the cloud server. Let's see. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Next stop, graduate school. Let's see what we need in order to be successful in grad school. All right, so this is our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of grad school, preparing yourself and positioning yourself for a graduate program, determining the goodness of fit, preparing your resume or CV, which do you need, a gap year to take or not to take, and what is success in graduate school. It really just depends on you, and then we'll end up with some questions. So we are going to record up until the question and answer portion, and then we're going to open up the floor and we're going to have discussion. Okay, so the purpose of graduate school really is to provide and to give you an in-depth understanding of your specific career, your specific area of expertise. It provides advanced and specialized training. And so sometimes also people will use a graduate school degree in order to negotiate a pay raise. And this oftentimes is specific for folks who are in business as well as in education. That's a little bit about why they do that. So what I usually tell people is you want to begin with the end in mind. You want to start early. So the earlier you begin your positioning, the better it is going to be for you, because you really should be determining your decisions based on where you see your end at. People begin as early as their freshman year, which is what I usually encourage people to do. But if you're not there, if you're beyond there, don't worry about it. That really does dictate your course of study, what your major is going to be, what your minor or your specialization is going to be. It helps you to determine any clubs and activities for which you're going to be involved, as well as any research experiences. I also encourage people to get experience in experiential learning as well as internships. And then you also want to work with mentors and expand your network. Mentors are wonderful folks who already have access to people, places, and things where you're trying to go, and they can help you kind of get to where it is you want to be. So determine goodness of fit. Again, you want to begin with the end in mind. So you don't want to pursue a career or any specialized training until you first have had what I call almost a reality check. First of all, who are you and why are you here, right? And so your degree should be consistent with who you are. If not, then your chances are highly likely you're not going to be successful. And the goal is for you to be successful. Another question I encourage you to ask is, where do you see yourself 7 to 10 years from now? Keep in mind that most graduate school programs take anywhere between 7 and 10 years, depending on whether or not you are going part-time, full-time, and depending on the degree. I know for PhD clinical psych programs, there are no part-time programs. You're gonna have to go full-time, and that's anywhere between 5 and 7 years of full-time work. Plus, if you plan on practicing in the state of New York, an additional 2 to 3 years for a postdoc, because you'll need to have had postdoc in order to be able to sit for your licensure as a psychologist in the state of New York. You'll also want to make, decisions of where you want to live and where you want to work when you're done, right? It is not uncommon that if people want, let's just take New York, for example, if people want to live in the New York metro area, they're going away to school for their doctoral program. They're going to the University of Michigan. They're attending WashU, right? And those are two of the top universities in the social sciences. They're attending UCLA. They're attending UC Berkeley. They're attending schools away so that it's going to be easier for them to come back to the New York area in order to get hired. You also need to consider, will you need additional training after you're completing your graduate studies? If that is the case, and which is going to be, again, if you're going for your PhD in clinical psych, it's going to be essential and critical that you do that. You want to make sure that you include that when you're determining your goodness of fit. I always say that graduate school, particularly if you're going for a PhD, you need to be mentally tough, you need to be resilient, and you need to keep in mind that this is a marathon and not a sprint. So you're going to have to pace yourself so you don't burn yourself out. Also, you want to make sure that you're researching. Take a look, research the industry or the field where you're looking to pursue. When you're looking to determine what graduate school that you're looking to attend, find out the outcomes of that graduate school. If, for example, you want to be a psychodynamic psychotherapist, you probably do not want to attend UNC Chapel Hill because they're very focused on CBT, right? If, for example, you want to be a researcher and work at an R1 institution when you're done, you probably don't want to attend an R3 institution for graduate school. You probably want to attend an R1 or an Ivy League, right? And so you want to keep those things in mind. I also encourage you to talk to current students or former students from the program for which you are applying, right? Find out what their experiences are like at that graduate school program, and you want to talk with students who are similar to you. So me, for example, I'm African-American woman. I would probably talk to more students who are African-American and students of color to find out what their experiences are like as a student of color at that institution. Do I have the supports? Am I going to have what I need in order to be successful? If, for example, I was diagnosed with a learning disability or was on autism spectrum disorders, then I would also go into that institution and ask to speak to people who have similar life experiences as mine to find out, again, whether this program or institution will be a goodness of fit for me. I also, little known fact, oftentimes, specifically when it comes to R1 institutions and clinical psych institutions and Ivy Leagues, you're actually applying not just to the university, but you're applying to work in the lab of a principal investigator, right? So you want to find out which PIs are conducting the kind of research that you want to conduct. If I want to conduct research on people with personality disorders, then I want to make sure I'm applying with a PhD program that has people with personality disorders, and that's their specialization, right? If that specialization is not in that university, that is not going to be a good university for me to study under. I really need to make sure I'm being very particular about where I'm applying. You also want to take a look at any financial supports the university is going to be able to provide. Are there research assistantships that are available? Are there teaching assistants that are going to be available? Are there scholarships or other funding opportunities that are going to be available? Do people typically get private funding? Am I going to be working with a PI that has federal funding or intramural support? If that's the case, then I am going to be able to really make sure that I'm financially supported. But keep in mind that if you're going to graduate school, more chances are highly than not that I'm going to be pursuing a degree full-time, which means I'm probably not going to be wealthy, but I at least need to make sure that my ends are meeting. Again, you also want to make sure that there are available resources and student supports. It is not uncommon to need to talk with someone while I'm pursuing graduate programs because the stress of it all will sometimes bring things up in life. So I want to make sure that there is a mental health counseling or some sort of counseling center that's available. If I'm working on my writing, I want to make sure that there's a writing center and there's some place where I can go to get extra services and supports that I need in order to be successful while I'm at and in that graduate program. I also encourage you to expand your network, right? Talk to people across the country, not just people who you know. It's okay to send a cold email to a researcher whose work you've read. Chances are highly likely they will respond to you. If not, It's okay. Contact someone else who may do that. You also want to take a look at the U.S. News and World Report. It really does matter where you go for your graduate school. Pedigree does matter. You want to get into as high of a ranked graduate program as possible. And you want to flourish, right? I encourage you to attend open houses and admissions events. That's a great time and a great space for you to meet with admissions officers to find out what it takes in order to get admitted into the program and what it takes in order to be successful in the program. I encourage you to conduct campus visits. Now, you probably don't want to wait until your senior year to make sure that you're conducting campus visits or attending open houses or admissions events, because oftentimes for the higher ranked schools, their deadlines for their applications are actually in the fall semester. So typically, generally in October and November, worst case scenario, December or early January is when all the graduate school applications for the better and the higher ranked programs, that's when those applications are due. So you want to make sure you give yourself an entire, at least a year, to make sure you are planning and you are strategic about where you're looking to pursue your degree. You also want to include and determine whether or not your research is more lending toward qualitative research or more quantitative research. If you are more of a qualitative researcher, I encourage you to make sure that you are keeping that in mind when you're applying for the programs. If you're more of a quantitative and a big data researcher, you want to keep that in mind as you are applying for graduate programs, because again, grad programs are designed to groom you and to fine-tune your skills so that when you are done with the duplication and the replication process, you should be a solid, strong researcher, whether qualitative or quantitative. Another part of preparing for grad school is to make sure that you are preparing your resume or your CV. And depending on the program that you're applying for will depend on whether or not you need a resume or whether or not you need a curriculum vitae. Your resume should be 1 to 2 pages long. Typically, it highlights your education and your employment experiences. And so for the kinds of graduate school programs that will require a resume, they include any of your business programs, they include education, they include law school, as well as nursing programs. Now, for curriculum vitae, there's no page limit. The longest vitae I've ever seen was a faculty member at the University of Texas at Austin who had an 89-page vitae. A vitae is exhaustive, and it really does focus on your academic pursuits. It's really academic in nature. So this includes if you're looking to attend medical school, any of the social sciences, AKA psychology or social work, if you're looking to become a researcher, or if you're looking to go into higher education, you really should look at making sure that you convert your resume to a vitae. Let's dig into a little bit more about a resume. How you would organize your resume, you would include any licensure that you have or your objective. You would then include your education, your certifications, any honors and awards you may have attained only throughout your undergraduate year. All of your high school stuff just kind of lops off. You want to then describe and chunk your experiences if you have different kinds or varied experiences. Say, for example, I have experiences in higher education, experiences in business, and experiences in journalism. I want to chunk all of the business experiences with business section, any of the higher ed experiences in higher ed, any of the journalism experiences within the journalism, chunk within experience. I then include any activities they may have participated in, on-campus activities while in undergrad, any community service activities, any affiliations with any organizations, and then I'll include my skills, including my language, my computer, and my social media skills. My vitae, however, is going to be slightly different. My vita not only includes my licensure and my education. If I have a dissertation, if I have my dissertation or a thesis, I'm going to include whoever my chair is in addition to my committee members. I'm then going to include my honors and awards. I then want to make sure that I am including my research experiences. So I'm going to include any teaching experiences, any clinical experience I have, and any service that I have. Now, for my research experience, everything has a hierarchy in a CV. So my research experience, any federal grant-funded research I have is going to be included, any private grants that I have, and any university research, and any university funding that I've received from my research, that will be clustered. Teaching, if I have my own class, and then if I've been a TA, and then as far as my service, any service to the profession, any service to the university, and then any service to the community. I'm then going to include a section for publications. That also gets ranked. Any peer-reviewed publications will be listed first, then any book chapters. Then the next section will be presentations, which also gets ranked. Peer-reviewed publication presentations will be first. Any invited presentations will be second, and then I will note whether these were oral or poster presentations. I will then include any trainings, and in the training section, I'll include my month and year. I'll include community service, similar to my resume. Also similar to my resume, I'll include any affiliations as well as any skills. Again, your CV is exhaustive. You do not have to worry about page count. You should include any and all experiences that are going to help set you apart from any of the rest of the applicants. Now, here's a question that I'm oftentimes asked and posed: should I take a gap year? Well, that really does depend on you. And so I cannot tell you whether or not you should take a gap year, but the questions I typically ask people is, how prepared are you really for graduate school? If you're preparing for a PhD in psychology or a PhD in social work, I typically encourage those students to take a gap year or two. Specifically particularly if you have not had an opportunity to gain the training that you're going to need to be successful, or sometimes you need additional experiences, whether it is clinical experience or research experience. So this is an opportunity for you to take the time to improve your resume, improve your CV. Excuse me. If you are looking to take a gap year or two, that's an opportunity for you to work in someone else's lab, to understand what it's like to get that hands-on research experience. And it's also an opportunity for you to mature emotionally. And then how about just taking a break? Sometimes your brain just needs a break. And undergrad is rigorous. I will tell you the difference between undergraduate and pursuing a graduate degree. It is very different. I will tell you what I usually tell people is an undergraduate degree. A grad degree is like an undergraduate degree on steroids. It is twice the amount of work, twice the amount of rigor, and twice the amount of responsibility. And you can never not go into your classes prepared, having read and analyzed, critiqued, and synthesized the information, and prepared to take that information to the next level. That is the expectation in graduate school. In graduate school, you're not the smartest bulb that is in the bunch. Everyone there is brilliant. And so you'll have to get used to being okay with not being the smartest one. It took a lot to get there, but once you're there, you're not the only brilliant one. Keep in mind that some programs also prefer that you get life experiences. So for folks who are interested in pursuing a business program, if I want to apply to Harvard or the University of Pennsylvania, any of the top 10 or 15 business schools wants you to have at least 5 years of work experience before you can even apply. As a matter of fact, they will not even look at your application if you do not have at least 5 years of business experience to be able to take into that classroom setting. Also, doctoral programs, again, very rigorous. If you do not have research experience, keep in mind that a PhD program is all about research. Even if you are working to become a clinician and your focus is to become a clinician, a clinical psychologist, you need to have a research area of expertise. And that if you have not had the experiences yet, whether clinical or research, to know what your focus is going to be, I encourage you to make sure you take the time to get the experience. Because the focus of PhD programs is to teach you how to gain knowledge to advance the profession. Which takes me to my next slide. What does it mean? What does success look like in graduate school? Well, it all depends on what your personal goals are. Again, begin with the end in mind. Grad school is not a time, place, and space for you to think and act like you have everything together and you know everything. You do not know everything. It is so encouraged and it is expected that you will seek out help either from upperclassmen, your faculty members, your classmates, your advisors, right? Your professors. Talk with people, get involved, and ask the critical questions. Another thing I want to encourage you is grad school success will also depend on your personal goals. If you're going for a PhD to become a licensed psychologist, your goals are going to be very different in grad school if your goal is to be an investigator for the NIMH. If your goal is to be an investigator at the NIMH, you really need to make sure that you have experience with multiple streams of intramural funding and working with researchers who are going to be able to provide that kind of information and expertise. If your professional goal in graduate school is to become a faculty member and a full-time faculty member, as a full-time faculty member, what is going to help you position you from the rest of the pack, you need to make sure that you have publications. You need to make sure that you have presentations. You need to make sure that you have research that is funded. Those are the things that are going to set you apart. And depending on the kind of school where you want to work in higher ed will depend on the number of publications that you should finish your graduate program with having. At this current juncture, the expectation, if you wanted to go into higher ed full-time as a full-time faculty, you should have anywhere between 7 and 10 peer-reviewed publications before you go on the market. Now I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm going to stop. I think I'm gonna stop recording. I don't